in their final encounter. Abruptly, the youth clad in black darts before the divine effigy. He's certain this entire ordeal lacks the convoluted nature everyone else insists upon. Seemingly, he's deciphered the enigma. Presuming it's the customary ritual, akin to beseeching their deity, he resolves to swiftly conclude the matter. This rudimentary demonstration of piety, standing before his celestial being, he prostrates himself before his almighty sovereign. With a resounding voice, he proclaims his God deserving of utmost reverence and acclaim. Addressing the deity directly, the black-clad youth professes himself a devout servant offering veneration. Without hesitation, the celestial statue, visibly impressed, grants him passage with resounding triumph. Leaping with glee, he can scarcely believe his success. The other children find comfort in the simplicity of the solution. Abruptly, Isaac, resembling a wriggling worm, emerges from Sherry's embrace, seemingly intent on mischief. Halting him mid-motion, Sherry commands this little rascal to offer a prayer. But Isaac retaliates with a swift kick to the ankle, silencing him. He has no intention of complying with such a request. Kina Barrett reminisces about acquiring the practice of prayer at the Holy See. Without further delay, Kina genuflects before her divine sovereign. She guides the less fortunate in the proper positioning of their bodies. When venerating their deity, the timid souls begin to emulate her, preparing to pray. Commencing her devotion, Kina initiates her worship. She invokes the Supreme Being, the deserving recipient of her adoration. And to him, Kina offers her reverence. Unexpectedly, the celestial effigy inquires whether the brunette is prepared for the undertaking, or is she experiencing a change of sentiment. He inquires whether the small one will yield and embrace demise. As an alternative, alarm surges within him, and the dark-haired youth hastily offers his reverence. In mere moments, all have prostrated themselves, paying homage to this divine effigy. At that instant, the celestial figure fixes its gaze upon the audacious babe, who remains nonchalantly seated before its supreme presence. It demands an explanation for the child's lack of genuflection. Isaac, with an utterly indifferent expression, retorts that the stone sculpture appears more demented than its pronouncements. Every child turns their attention to Isaac, who seems to have taken leave of his senses. They ponder whether his belief is wavering. Abruptly, the conjecture disseminates rapidly amongst the aspiring saints. They murmur that the speculation regarding the Joshua clans, eroding piety, might hold truth. While genuflecting in adoration, Sherry struggles to contain his rage towards this fiend, who relentlessly seeks to besmirch their family's honor. He desires this foolish babe to simply offer a prayer and be done with. Meanwhile, Kina Barrett fancies his prospects. After all, the entire spectacle is being documented. He contemplates, does this infant genuinely intend to sabotage his aspirations of sainthood? Kina can't dispute that the burgeoning aptitude would be meaningless if his babe lacked inherent faith. He laments his initial interference with such a child. Suddenly, the divine effigy deems the infant's irreverent conduct utterly improper, especially for an offspring of the saintess lineage. But Isaac remains utterly indifferent. He esteems death as a more benevolent fate than genuflecting before this scoundrel. The deity is utterly astonished by this display, and Isaac, unafraid of mortality, unravels his shadowy aura. It radiates a sinister energy, enveloping the stone idol. Infuriated by the audacious child, the divine statue commands the blasphemer to vanish from his presence. His jaw clenched tight, Isaac, consumed by rage, retaliates against the stone visage. He defiantly commands the supposed deity to end its own existence. Enraged, Isaac erupts in a furious outburst, resolute in his intent to dismantle the grotesque effigy. The shadowy entity trembles, observing its master consumed by such intense emotion. It cautions him, sensing an aura of imminent peril. Just as he's poised to unleash his wrath, the divine statue dramatically shifts the narrative, revealing that Isaac's performance was exemplary. Completely taken aback, Isaac is utterly bewildered by the sudden turn of events. Isaac stands there, dumbfounded, as the stone face proclaims him the successful fledgling candidate. Without offering any further clarification, it directs him to proceed immediately to the third repository. The unexpected outcome leaves everyone else astonished. All the children, including Kina and Barrett, are utterly stunned. They had all anticipated witnessing the blasphemer's demise, but fate had other plans for this day. Without a moment's hesitation, Kina voices her grievances to the divine effigy, the very one he'd explicitly requested as proof of their devotion to proceed. She indignantly inquires how that arrogant child manages to advance, without so much as lifting a finger. Clarifying the situation for the young lady, the celestial figure proclaims that the boy, Isaac, is granted sole access to the threshold of the third ordeal, deeming him eligible. He recognizes Isaac as the sole possessor of genuine faith in the divine. This revelation catches Isaac completely off guard. The stone countenance elucidates that these faint-hearted individuals were eager to prostrate themselves before the statue, not the deity himself. Therefore, he questions whether their belief system dictates obeisance to a graven image. Outwitted by an icon indeed, he concedes that it's logical. Gradually, the children comprehend that they've succumbed to this simple ruse. One child contends that even if akin to their deity, Scripture prohibits genuflection before a false idol. To this, the celestial being responds that Isaac maintained his belief in the face of mortal dread. Thus, he gains access to the third vault. He ascends, a self-satisfied smirk adorning his face. Isaac and the dark soul erupt in laughter, relishing this unforeseen twist. Yet, Kina displays reluctance to acknowledge this outcome, protesting that Isaac lacks the capacity for speech. He asserts that there's no definitive proof of Isaac's reverence or genuflection. Nevertheless, the dark soul concedes that the astute coward is unequivocally correct. Furthermore, Kina postulates that if Isaac proceeds along this path, he might potentially acquire a sacred mark, a stigmata. A stigmata is a divine inscription etched upon the flesh with holy energy. Kina, alleging possession of one, contends that it's peculiar how this sole, saintly aspirant lacks such a mark. She speculates that this hypothesis might diminish Isaac's prospects of triumph. However, the celestial statue refutes her conjecture by noting Isaac's infancy. At that moment, the divine figure inserts a digit into its nasal cavity, confirming its infantile state. Kina then implores him for entry as well. Now, all the children plead with the deity, and he acknowledges their yearning to access the third vault. Thus, he resolves to grant them passage. Admittedly, he senses something amiss about this stone visage. He forewarns them, should they desire a glimpse of true perdition, he shall usher them in, unveiling the gateway to the third ordeal. A surge of shadowy energy rushes forth in their direction. Quaking with dread, they feel the urge to retch. Now, they're having reservations about their decision. The stone countenance guarantees that this unsettling sensation emanates from the skeleton monarch, though he intended to exempt the youngsters, who couldn't withstand these malevolent emanations. Meanwhile, Isaac's elation is immeasurable. His physical form lies within, and he's tantalizingly close to it. The mere thought leaves him salivating. Isaac never anticipated this eventual reunion, since his self-annihilation in the celestial domain. Furthermore, he's elated to observe the shadowy energy permeate the skeletal monarch's resurrected form. He appears to have descended into madness. The divine effigy reflects Isaac's unwavering conviction, mirroring the countenance of a valiant combatant who remains unperturbed by this unsettling energy. Observing him, the coward's jaws plummet in astonishment. Upon noticing Isaac's peculiar expression, they perceive that this babe seems utterly deranged. They've never encountered such an extraordinary infant. Nevertheless, the ultimate guardian proclaims that the group still has a chance to reconsider. If they're willing to proceed, he asserts that only those should step forward who can maintain a smile in the face of demise. Otherwise, they should retreat, should they choose to forfeit. The last sentinel will permit the defeated to claim their spoils and depart. However, the youth clad in darkness hasn't formulated a strategy to overcome this sinister aura. Some youngsters are certain that entering means certain doom. Should they cross the threshold, they opt to select a designated prize from the secondary vault and return home, settling for fourth place. Kina demonstrates her dedication to the third challenge, displaying no desire for the treasures of the second level. He proclaims their unanimous entry. Furthermore, Kina insists that the final guardian unleash every snare within. Their eyes widen in astonishment. The children believe the simpleton has gone mad to request such a thing. Kina declares that no formidable saint, not even the esteemed Saintess Melissa, could successfully recover the Skeleton King's remains. The final guardian deduces that Kina possesses some knowledge regarding the third chamber. To this, she offers a knowing smirk. Melissa wouldn't allow the children to rush headlong into peril, so Kina presents herself as a safeguard. Moreover, he anticipates hearing of their success without a moment's hesitation. Kina commands the Guardian to revert the third chamber to its original, most perilous condition. All of this simply to be perceived as vastly superior to Melissa. Isaac believes Brad has lost his mind. The Sentinel heeds her request. Without uttering another word, the group allows Kina to enter alone. Despite their intentions, an unseen force draws them all inward. Suddenly, the Dark Soul gestures towards the Skeleton King's hand, and Isaac's joy intensifies dramatically. Grinning maniacally, Isaac commends his physique for enduring for so long. It's revealed that his body has been absorbing the third chamber's magical energy. The brunette inquires if it's the Skeleton King's remains, but Kind and Black clarify that it's merely an appendage. However, that's not the full story. Isaac deduces that it's only the thumb emitting the uncanny energy, while the remainder is merely a facsimile. Amidst processing this information, a monstrous creature with blazing crimson eyes materializes. The youngsters panic at the sight of the infernal sovereign. They speculate that such an apparition wouldn't manifest in the third vault. Consequently, the Guardian reminds the children that they brought this upon themselves. The boy clad in black promptly attributes the blame to Kina. Isaac's mind races as the beast emits a spine-chilling roar. He remains entirely unperturbed. Kina guarantees their acquisition of the promised riches. The thought prompts Kina to recall the 14 familiars, the elite retinue trained by the skeletal monarch, and the Pope family's captured simpletons. He possesses a trump card. The sacred incantation to subdue the creature and secure the treasure belongs to him. Without a moment's hesitation, he unleashes his might, and the beast shrieks in agony. Isaac remains utterly indifferent. The other children are utterly astonished. Seemingly, the Pope family's influence has proven effective. Unexpectedly, the beast inquires if Kina is responsible. The demonic entity is thoroughly bewildered, consumed by rage. They inquire audaciously if kindred dares lay claim to their monarch's remains. Abruptly, an individual interjects with startling news. The demonic entity's confinement within the third vault has been breached. Overwhelmed by panic, Gowl speculates if the 14 familiars are responsible. Riley grasps the immense peril the children now face and urgently requests the presence of the senior overseers. The elderly gentleman reveals that the group has vanished. After disabling the vault's security measures, they acknowledge that no child could confront such a formidable creature alone. Consequently, they resolve to terminate the assessment. However, a radiant flash engulfs them. They deduce that the artifact repository is unveiling itself. Barrett Bishop beams with pride, attributing Kina's success to his lineage. Meanwhile, Gowl is astounded that a mere youth vanquished the demonic entity. Rowley wagers it was Kina Barrett, scion of the Pope family. The assembly lauds Bishop Barrett, while he proclaims the imminent demise of the Joshua lineage. He expects them to swear fealty to the Pope family, as they now possess the skeletal monarch's remains. At that moment, the youngsters emerged. However, Rowley's gaze scanned for Isaac and Sherry amidst the group gathered at the threshold. The children bore minor scrapes and bruises, but appeared generally unscathed. Nevertheless, the contingent of children who had ventured into the third repository remained absent. Anxiety mounted as the parents questioned the unfolding events. Riley and Asiley observed the final procession of children, which encompassed Sherry and Armand among them, sprinting towards their father's welcoming arms. Rowley discerned Isaac's absence. A wave of panic engulfed Rowley, his mind racing with worry over his young son's whereabouts. Confirmation arrived. Isaac was conspicuously missing from the last group. Bishop Barrett confronted Kina, demanding, "What became of the skeletal monarch's remains?" His voice, sharp and insistent, pressed for an explanation. Beads of perspiration formed on Kina's brow. She grappled with the daunting task of divulging her blunder. In the meantime, the bishop noticed the worthless trinket from the second vault clutched in her hand. Abruptly, the ultimate sentinel, radiant as a gilded wolf, hangs suspended in midair. It snatches the infant Isaac in its jaws, an action that completely startles everyone present. This includes Riley, and seemingly Isaac himself. With a self-satisfied smirk, Isaac observes the assembly. The aureate canine descends, touching down with baby Isaac in tow. Without a moment's hesitation, Riley strides towards the creature, accompanied by Aisley, to retrieve his son. Halting abruptly, Aisley inquires of Master Riley whether this golden wolf is in fact the guardian dragon, entrusted with safeguarding the artifact vault. Their mouths gape open at the spectacle of the sacred WIRM, emerging to return the infant Isaac. Riley can't deny the undeniable truth. It is the genuine holy dragon. It is the fledgling charged with overseeing the repository of relics. Furthermore, he affirms that even in its lupin form, the creature's sheer presence unequivocally proclaims its identity as the holy dragon incarnate. Riley is unequivocally persuaded that it's a descendant of the matriarch, profoundly connected to the dragons and summoned from within the artifact chamber. He deems its presence too. An odd sound abruptly emanates from Isaac's mouth. The elder, overwhelmed with shock, is appalled that an infant is gnawing on the skeleton king's remains. He informs the baby that the skeletal monarch is not a suitable chew toy. But the truly alarming thing is, this babe managed to dislodge the skeleton king's corpse. With a piercing gaze and potential hallucinations, Bishop inquires if Kina permitted the infant to possess the skeleton king's body. Bishop proclaims Kina's action to be an act of utter foolishness. However, he acknowledges that it's the saint's responsibility to uphold the host's dignity. But the holy dragon isn't convinced by this pretense. He declares young Isaac the rightful heir to the skeleton king's remains, as he acquired them through legitimate means. Meanwhile, Isaac displays an eerie grin, flashing a victory sign, and Kina sulks as his father receives the devastating announcement. In retrospect, the demon kin, utterly enraged, prepares to assault Kina. Meanwhile, she contemplates the malfunction of her sacred incantation. Without further delay, the demonic entity condemns them all to perish. Already consumed by panic, the children opt for flight as the creature succumbs to a frenzied rage, engulfing the area in a haze of smoke and debris. The demonic entity forfeits control. At that moment, Kina is astonished to witness someone conjuring a cerulean protective shield of cotton-like consistency. It's the handiwork of Isaac, who is currently charging towards the demonic entity, poised to settle the score. Kina is utterly bewildered to observe Joshua's offspring accomplishing this feat, uttering the same familiar phrase. The demonic entity unleashes unmitigated terror in an attempt to vanquish the child. But Isaac remains undeterred. Channeling all his energy into a single blow, Isaac delivers a forceful, visceral punch to the demon king for failing to recognize his liege, unexpectedly arriving in the present. The elder and the others recognize the holy dragon's inherent truthfulness. Even these seasoned individuals are stunned to process the reality that Isaac Joshua retrieved the skeletal remains of the monarch. They ponder Kina's subsequent actions. What did she do then? Even Riley struggles to comprehend that his offspring committed such a perilous act. Furthermore, Riley insists on understanding why the demon Kinsfiend was lifted, when mere adolescents were ill-equipped to manage it. This amuses him. He points his finger at the haughty, ivory-clad brat, Kina Barrett, accusing her of instigating such a notion. Abruptly, the timid youngsters unanimously place the blame on Kina for triggering the hidden dangers within the third vault and compelling their entry. The parents are incredulous. They're astonished that Kina Barrett jeopardized their children's well-being for this. They never anticipated such a despicable act from a member of the Pope's lineage. They collectively believe that if Isaac Joshua hadn't intervened, the repercussions would have been catastrophic. Subsequently, the group concludes that, judging by the outcome, the Joshua clan has triumphed over the Pope family. The mere contemplation of this infuriates the bishop. Defeat was not an option for him. Whispers of Isaac's latent capabilities echo throughout the crowd. Despite his inability to attain sainthood, he possesses immense power within. The spectators are now certain that the Joshua clan has been orchestrating their resurgence. Conversely, Rely beams with pride at her son's exceptional performance. Furthermore, the elders practically implore Isaac to relinquish the bone. For heaven's sake, the moment they attempt to touch Isaac, he rebuffs their advances. The old men are baffled by the infant's extraordinary strength. In the meantime, Isaac detects a surge of magical energy within himself and contemplates whether it originates from Survive. The elderly woman informs Rely that the matriarch eagerly awaits a full account. With a sinister grin, the old woman is confident they can locate the Skeleton King's remains. By utilizing the bone, She cackles, a sound befitting a sorceress, prepared to locate the corpse with a tracking incantation. Witnessing this commotion, Isaac's complexion blanches, comprehending the Ancient One's scheme. Their objective, to rend the skeleton's spirit asunder, settling a century-and-a-half-old vendetta. At that moment, the sacred WRM genuflects, relinquishing Isaac, and abandoning the maniacs to their chaos. Within a chamber resembling a surgical theater, the masked crone proclaims its absence, perhaps inspecting Isaac's swaddling clothes. The group laments their failure to locate the bone. Meanwhile, Isaac defies the elders, asserting they can scour everything, but he won't surrender it. Moreover, the events within the artifact repository unsettle Asses and further disquiet him. After delivering a forceful blow to the Demon Lord for failing to recall his liege, the Demon Lord finally discerns his master's magical essence. Upon seeing his liege, the Demon King is overcome with a wave of nostalgia. Teetering on the precipice of demise, he reminisces that the news of his master's passing led him to believe his own end was imminent. However, he affirms that he always held the conviction that his master would return. As he commences to dissipate, he voices his yearning to once again be in his master's service. Barely capable of uttering a word, he alludes to his imprisonment by the clergy. Isaac implores the Demon King to articulate more distinctly, as he is besieged by a multitude of inquiries. But alas, it is too late. Back in the present, Isaac deduces that the papal lineage is culpable for his confinement. He resolves to investigate this affair forthwith. Currently, Riley, clutching a feeding utensil, beseeches Isaac to expel the skeletal fragment. In the meantime, the Council of Elders clamor for the attendants to procure more potent purgatives. This entire ordeal is utterly exasperating him, and Isaac is on the verge of turning the dwelling upside down imminently. Meanwhile, the elders tremble at the mere prospect of the matriarch discovering this predicament. Their demise is unavoidable down this path. The codger is convinced they'd even resort to dissecting the child, to extract the very bone that intensifies Relly's anxieties. Yet, he implores the elder to remain calm, assuring him everything will be fine. However, Relly is acutely aware that the woman has previously operated on her own son, but her grandson presents an entirely different scenario. At least, that's his current assumption. Despite this, they can't help but fidget nervously, a shiver tracing down their spines. Meanwhile, the shadowy figure insists on knowing whether Melissa departed with the matriarch for a sacred journey. Isaac informs him that they're going to be detained there for some time. In the interim, he should concentrate on absorbing all available magical energy before Melissa appears and then makes a hasty escape. Unexpectedly, Isaac's uncle emerges to summon Riley, conveying the matriarch's desire for a conversation. This revelation astonishes Isaac. The suddenness of the request catches everyone off guard. The notion of his mother's presence leaves Riley utterly bewildered. He inquires urgently whether Mother has already returned. Seemingly not. Their mother typically doesn't make such a swift return from her spiritual journey. As usual, Isaac's mouth becomes parched, his jaws clenched tightly. He deduces that the old woman rushed back due to his actions.